Hi, and welcome to Real Life with Jenny. My name's Jenny Sanaparatna. Grab your favorite drink and a snack, and we will get started. Today, I am drinking a tea a friend gave me, which I'm really kind of excited to try, even though it's a green tea. It's Brown and Ashley's Gourmet Mango Tea. I know, doesn't that sound delicious? And then I have some chocolate caramel tarts that they're called tartlets that I bought in Paris, and I actually bought them for the podcast. So then when I was doing the podcast, I had something kind of fun. So yay, it's going to be a good day, but let's get real. So last episode, I talked a little bit about our trip to Belgium, and today I want to talk about the weirdness that happened on that trip. So have you ever heard the expression, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong? Yes, that would summarize this trip to a T. If something could go wrong, it happened on this trip. I went in with great expectations, which is the way you should live life, in my personal opinion. And my husband is really big into saying, Lord willing. Like, if the Lord wills it, it will happen. And when I want something really badly to happen, it frustrates me so much when he said, Lord willing. I was like, stop saying Lord willing, because that means it may not happen. And I need to count on this, and I need this. And, I get all like hysterical. So when we were on our way for this trip, there were so many hurdles that we had to jump through to even get there that he would say, Lord willing. And I'd be like, stop. This is the Lord's will. Quit saying that. I need to get on this vacation or this trip. It was a ministry trip, so it wasn't technically vacation. But I'm like, I need to, this is important to me, and, stop putting it in someone else's hands. I want to be in control. Yeah, bad mistake, Jenny, right? All of you just went, ooh, that wasn't good. But in the middle of the chaos that was this trip, I learned Lord willing was the only way to make it through the day. I am a girl that gets very anxious, and anxiety can almost cripple me. In fact, it does cripple me. When I get anxious, it doesn't necessarily affect me during that time, whether it's an hour or 17 hours or however long I'm living in extreme anxiety. It affects me the next day. I get really sick whenever I get upset or anxious, or I get really sick the next day. I'm almost unable to function the next day. It is really crazy how all that adrenaline or whatever pumps into my body when I get anxious, the next day I am out. Like, blech. And so we're on this trip, and, I already talked about us getting lost, us not having food, like COVID tests going wrong. I mean, it was just one thing after the other. We actually went to get our testing done to come home to the US. So we were in Brussels at this point, and we needed to get tested because you need a certain amount of days to be able to get the tests back, because they're a little bit, it's like 2 to 3 days in Brussels to get the test back. And we were leaving, so we needed to get our test to be able to get on the plane to come home, or they don't let you come back. So we went to this, we set up an appointment, which was very difficult to do. But my husband is so diligent and so willing to work harder than the rest of us, that he worked very hard at night and got us scheduled. We went in. They couldn't figure out what was going on because there were 3 people with the same name. We don't speak their language. It was this whole thing. And so they actually gave me a test and said, this is for Samantha. And I'm like, I'm Jennifer. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine. One of them called me Jessica. Like, hey, Jessica, here's your test. And you're like, I'm not Jessica. Anyway, so we took our tests, and the next morning We actually got on a train right after we took the test to Paris. So we took our train to Paris. It was amazing. Almost didn't get into Paris because they needed a test, and it was all this craziness. And I was like, okay, Lord, am I learning to trust you a lot more? And yes, I did. So our first morning in Paris, we get up and we're going to go see things. The night before, we'd seen the Eiffel Tower at night. And honestly, I'm going to cry a little. It was a dream come true. It's one of those things that as a kid, you saw the Eiffel Tower and it was at night, and it's a super amazing thing. And honestly, it was amazing. I thought it was just phenomenal. Kevin was like, yeah, it's a little smaller than I thought it would be. We all have different expectations. It was just a dream come true. So the next morning we woke up and Kevin was like, oh, great, we got our COVID tests back. And I'm like, oh, that's wonderful. And so he opened mine first because he knew that I was the most worried. He knew that I'm the one that deals with the most anxiety in the family, and I get the most worried. And so he opened mine and he was like, and he looked at me funny. And I was like, what's wrong? And he's like, yours just came back positive. And I was like, what? What do you mean positive? And so my COVID test came back positive. And then about 2 to 3 minutes later, we got 2 more tests. One for Samantha, another one for Samantha. Both of them were negative. None for Kevin. And we're like, okay, so what happened here? Where did Kevin's test go? How was I positive? Because I was negative 24 hours before that, which I know that can happen, but I'm like, this is crazy. So we're like, what do you do? And I was sitting in our hotel room knowing that we had a day of sightseeing in Paris ahead of us. And it was that moment that I realized that Lord willing was the way I needed to deal with this. I needed to go, okay, God, you know what? You are in charge. And that is hard. That's a hard moment, right? It's a hard moment to not be like, okay, here's what we're going to do. Do. And we're going to fix this, and this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And it was that moment of, we are in Paris. We do not speak the language. We need to get on a plane in 2 days to go back to the U.S. And the hotel we were staying in, which was gorgeous, but it was a free hotel because we have anniversary nights. And so we didn't actually pay for any hotels except for one, I believe, the entire trip. So we were staying in one of the nicest hotels in Paris. It was like $400 a night. And I'm like, we cannot be quarantined in this hotel for 10 days at $400 a night. I mean, it's great that we're here for free, but we didn't eat breakfast at the hotel because it was $12 a person. And I'm like, honey, I cannot spend $36 for breakfast. I just can't do it. So I'm too cheap. And I'm like, Lord, if we're quarantined in Paris, what are we going to do? Because can we technically move hotels? Can we, you just start running all these crazy scenarios. And God was like, Jenny, I've got this. And I'm like, Lord, I have a positive COVID test. What do you have? I feel great. And I did feel great. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know what to do. And we always err on the side of caution. That is who we are. We're very careful. Especially when it comes to COVID and all these things, we err on the side of caution. And Kevin looked at me and said, Jenny, I think they made some mistakes. And I'm like, well, yeah, we know they made some mistakes, right? We know that they did 2 COVID tests for Sam and 1 for me. And I'm not even sure mine is mine. I was Jessica. Now I'm Jennifer. Who knows what's actually going on? So we went down to the front desk and we said, where can we do a COVID test? And they were like, oh, we don't really know. And not luckily, God watched every step for us. I mean, it was just amazing how he watched our steps. Some travelers that actually spoke English came to the front desk at the exact same time Kevin was there and said, "Oh, we just got our COVID test. It's a block down," gave him exact instructions, told him how much money it would cost, exactly where to go, and that will get you back to the US. Like, because the front desk had no idea. They were like, "We don't know. I don't know where you can go. The one we normally send you to is closed." And the Lord put someone right there that had just gotten done doing it and knew exactly how to get us there. So Kevin and I decided to leave Samantha since she had 2 negative COVID tests. She was fine. Kevin had none. I had a positive. What are we going to do? So we go and we walk down the street to go take our test. We left Samantha in the hotel and she ended up texting with friends. She had a great time. But we didn't know how long it would take. We're like, we had actually gone and tested in Belgium our first test, and it took us over 2 hours to test there because we had to wait in line, and then you had to sign away, I don't know what, here is everything that you ever needed. And so we waited in line for 2 hours for that first test. And so we didn't know how long it would take in Paris. And we didn't know we kind of knew how expensive it would be, but we weren't really sure. And they had said it would be like $155 online per person. And you're like, Lord, it's better than 10 days in a very expensive hotel. It's actually better than 10 days in any hotel in Paris, And so we're like, okay, Lord, you've got this. And that's really what I was going through. I was like, Lord, you have this next step. I need to trust that you have the next step because I don't see the 6 steps down the road. I don't, you can't. And it was just such a craziness for me because I'm such a worrier. I hold it and I just worry and worry. I don't know if you're the same way. I hope you're not. I hope that you are much more calm than I am. So we get to this place and they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't do that test." And we're like, "Oh, you don't do that test?" They're like, "No, you have to go down the staircase and into this other place." And Lord was with us. The Lord was with us because we couldn't go down those stairs without a ticket on the train. And we're like, "Oh wait, we do." When we got to Paris, I said, let's just buy 2 days worth of tickets. So then we can get on and off any kind of transportation in Paris and not have to worry about it. Because the first time I was in Paris, I went with my sister and we walked Paris because we didn't know how to use their transportation. We had a ticket for their transportation, but we didn't know how to use it. And I ended up with blisters and I ended up in front of the Eiffel Tower crying. And, it was kind of a mess. So I said, when we get to Paris, we are buying 2 days because we were there for 48 hours. We are buying tickets for when we're there so we can get on anything. And we had tickets to be able to go down the stairs. We went down the stairs to this pharmacy. We walked in and said, "We need COVID tests." And they're like, "When are you leaving?" And we said, "Friday." And they said, "It's too early. You can't do it." And Kevin's like, no, we need to do it. And he's like, "No, it's too early. Come back tomorrow." And Kevin's like, "No, our airline says you can do it." And he was like, "Okay, if you feel like you can do it, that's fine." So nobody was waiting in line. In fact, while Kevin was setting it up, the lady was like, "Why don't you come back, miss, and I'll take your COVID test while he's paying for everything, and then, it's already done." So, we were in and out in 15 minutes. It was amazing. I was like, Lord, you orchestrated this. So we get back to the hotel and we're like, now what do we do? And we knew we had outdoor stuff to do. We weren't inside anywhere. We were actually going to a park and spending the day in a park. So we decided to go to the park. And while we were at the park, I'm not 100% sure, we got our COVID test back. They came back super quick and both of them came back negative. And it was that moment that I realized that God had orchestrated every single step that day. He knew that Jenny would be hysterical until those COVID tests came back. He knew that I needed to get back to the U.S. Okay, maybe I didn't. It might have been fun to be stuck in Paris, but you can't leave your hotel, so that does not sound fun to me. But I so often in life get to the point that I don't trust his plan. And so since I've gotten home, chaos is thrown at you. And I have gone back to that day. And there's other stories that I'm going to share in other podcasts of things that God did that during this vacation. That I'm like, it shows me that God cares about my little things too. He cares about my big traumas, but he also cares about my day-to-day anxieties that creep in and the triggers in your life. And he loves you, and he has a better plan than you do. I know I said at the beginning, I'm not good at someone else's plan. I'm just not. I like to be the planner. I like to be the one in charge. In fact, people do make fun of me because I am the driver in our family. And that was the best thing I ever did for our marriage is when I said, honey, I really like to drive. Can I drive instead of you? And it makes me feel a lot less anxious when I'm driving than when other people are. It's just weird. I am a control freak, and it's okay. I'm learning to give up my control to the one that knows what he's doing, and that's God. And that day, I realized that God orchestrated every single moment. He orchestrated Kevin opening up that email because he wasn't going to check his emails that morning. He was just going to take that morning and just chill because we had a really chill day. And he was like, I think he felt like he was supposed to. So he opened up those emails. We saw the big mistake that was happening in Belgium. We ran into somebody. Well, I didn't run into them. Kevin ran into somebody that had just taken the test. We went there. We had the ticket to get in. We were able to get in right away, and it came back negative, and we got to come home. And we had a lovely day in Paris. It was a beautiful, fun day as a family. It was just wonderful. We actually ended up at the Eiffel Tower later that day during the day and just walked around and saw things and just enjoyed being with one another and sharing stories and having churros. And it was just a very lovely, lovely day that God orchestrated because I didn't panic. I didn't go, okay, here's Jenny's plan. I went, Lord willing, we get home. Lord willing, you're in charge. God, I need you today. And this week, as you're walking through all of the chaos that's happening and things are being thrown at you left and right. And Mom, I need cookies for this party. And I forgot to buy gifts for that person. And because we're in the middle of Christmas right now. And there are so many things that are flying at you that you have no control over. And I'm going to tell you right now that God is orchestrating and walking through this with you. And he loves you. And yes, you get those tests and you get the bad news. And God has a plan through that. And I don't know what that is for you, but I pray that his peace comes into whatever situation you're dealing with, and his guidance is there with you. That even in the midst of tears and heartbreak and financial ruin, that you see that God loves you and he's orchestrating a plan and putting people in your path to help you and help you navigate where to go next. Well, that is all I have for you today. I really pray that this week is a week of peace and a week of you going, Lord willing. Lord, you are in charge of this small or this huge problem. Or this really great thing, or this really, whatever you're going to have happen this week. You can find us at christconnection.cc/Jen. All of my information is there, or on Facebook and Instagram at Real Life with Jenny. I am so excited to connect with you. I hope that you can find us there. You all have a blessed week.